Good afternoon. My name is Graham Boettcher and I serve as Executive Director of the Birmingham Museum of Art. I am broadcasting live today from the Red Mountain Garden Club Memorial Garden at the Birmingham Museum of Art. So we're taking a bit of a field trip. We've been cooped up, so to speak, in the galleries since March 15th. I'm taking you to our outdoor galleries, and they really are outdoor galleries. We show works of art here, but moreover, in the Red Mountain Garden Club Memorial Garden, it's an opportunity for our visitors to experience beautiful art in the midst of nature's own art. These incredible trees and plantings that provide shade and beauty, and I think one of the country's finest urban oases. So I'm pleased to share that with you today. I will also mention that this is my 50th broadcast, so a golden anniversary of sorts. Not ever a number I expected to reach when we closed the museum on March 15th earlier this year. Actually, Sunday, March 15th at 3:30 p.m. to be precise. I think that will forever be burned in my brain. And when I first broadcast the following week, I think at that point we probably thought we were in this for, I don't know, a couple of months, few months, maybe we would be open by the middle of the summer. Well, here we are after Labor Day, and the museum is still closed. I'm hoping that will change shortly. We have a meeting of our board of directors next week, and setting a reopening date is very much at the top of the agenda. But until then, until that is announced, I will continue to broadcast weekly at Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Central Time. So with that, I am going to turn the camera off of me because you did not come here to see my mug. You came to see this glorious space, the Red Mountain Garden Club Memorial Garden, and then I'm going to take you through the rest of our outdoor space. So kind of a word of defining terms at the outset. Sometimes there is some confusion about the naming of our outdoor spaces. The Red Mountain Garden Club Memorial Garden, which is where I'm sitting right now, which was where all of this fabulous greenery is, which is lovingly founded and maintained by the Red Mountain Garden Club, which I'll tell you more about in just a moment. This is the heart of our outdoor space. It is by far the most popular of our outdoor spaces in terms of regular use. It has an incredible shade canopy, as you can see. I'm sitting out here right now wearing a blazer and perfectly comfortable thanks to the beautiful shade provided by this gorgeous canopy of oaks. The kind of blanket term for all of our outdoor space is the Charles W. Ireland Sculpture Garden. And that is kind of an overarching term that includes this space, the upper plaza, and the sculpture court. But make no mistake, the Red Mountain Garden Club Memorial Garden here at the museum, this is the kind of our original outdoor space and our most visited, and for very, very obvious reasons. It is a completely delightful space in which to spend the afternoon. We normally, when we have visitors coming to the museum, you'll see people out here having lunch, sometimes reading a book, and that has continued to some extent for our staff during the duration of this pandemic. This has been available for people to enjoy, and it's quite easy to have what are we calling it? A distanced hangout here in the garden. I'm sitting right now because I have some notes in front of me, and I want to make sure I get everything just right. And I only have two hands, and it's a little difficult to balance the iPad with just one hand, though I will make do. But it's also slightly windy today, and so I'm worried about my notes getting away with me if I try to travel with them. So if you'll indulge me for just a moment, I want to give you all a bit of background. First about the Red Mountain Garden Club, kind of some general history and their mission, and then about the Memorial Garden in specific and some history. And then we're going to go on a walking tour of all of our outdoor spaces throughout the Memorial Garden. I'll give you a peek around the corner in the sculpture court. There's not much going on in there right now, but I'll show you that space. And then we'll go to the Upper Plaza, which I think many of you know if you've attended Art on the Rocks, some of our larger events that with the museum ball. That's typically where we have bands set up, or a dance floor. It's a kind of a performance pavilion by design, but with some very important sculpture there as well. So a little bit of background about the Red Mountain Garden Club, because this has been their passion project since the late 1950s. And I'll give you some specific information. I love newspapers.com and was able to pull up the very article that announced the founding of the garden back in 1959. So more on that in just a moment. But the Red Mountain Garden Club was founded here in Birmingham in February of 1927. It's a member of the Garden Club of America, which is the kind of premier organization for American garden clubs and for those who are just really passionate and dedicated to the art and practice of gardening. The purpose of the Garden Club of America is to stimulate the knowledge and love of gardening, and I'm quoting from the Red Mountain Garden Club's website, to share the advantages of association by means of educational meetings, conferences, correspondence, and publications, and to restore, improve, and protect the quality of the environment through educational programs and action in the fields of conservation and civic improvement. They live this mission, not just the Red Mountain Garden Club, but the other GCA garden clubs. And I think it was several years ago, there was a meeting of the GCA here in Birmingham, hosted by the Red Mountain Garden Club. And, these individuals mean serious business when it comes to gardens, and it is an incredible way of giving back to the community. Not only has the Red Mountain Garden Club been instrumental to the founding and ongoing maintenance and re-envisioning of this space, because they've had to re-envision it a couple of times through various expansions and renovations of the museum. So it's not by any means a one-and-done proposition. It's something that requires constant, care and feeding and attention, so to speak. But I believe they were also instrumental in the rejuvenation of George Ward Park, among other projects in our city. So they give a lot back to this community and are extremely dedicated, and we are extremely grateful here at the museum for that dedication. They're also deeply involved with the Birmingham Botanical Gardens, and that deserves mention. The Botanical Gardens right now, it's just such a wonderful space to have in this city. It's so unique, with so many kind of unique, for lack of a better term, I'm sure there's a proper term, pocket gardens or galleries. Let's use the term we would use here at the museum, where you can have a very different experience in each of the distinct spaces there. So shout out to the Birmingham Botanical Gardens and our friends and colleagues over there. So the Red Mountain Garden Club had the idea of creating a beautiful outdoor space as part of this building, the original Birmingham Museum of Art building, also known as the Oscar Wells Memorial Building, when it opened to the public on May 3rd, 1959. And a garden at the rear of the building was opened simultaneously, and it was, quote, dedicated to those who by their work and gifts have beautified our city. And the garden is officially named the Memorial Garden, established by the Red Mountain Garden Club. We call it the Red Mountain Garden Club Memorial Garden. We've sort of flipped the order on its official name, and it was the vision of Ferris Gambrel Lynn, who was the president of the Red Mountain Garden Club in 1955 at the time that this garden was originally conceived. The Red Mountain Garden Club worked with a noted landscape architect here in Birmingham named William Kessler, who was an honorary member of their club to design the space. And Mr. Kessler, it should be mentioned, was also a personal friend of Mr. and Mrs. Oscar Wells. That is significant because it's Mrs. Wells who gave the money to build what became the Birmingham Museum of Art. It's thanks to her generosity that we had our original building. And she had also been a founding member of the Red Mountain Garden Club and served as its first secretary and treasurer. And this history, I should mention, to give credit where credit is due, is all from the excellent write-up on the Red Mountain Garden Club's website, which I will post to this in the chat to this talk. The original memorial garden, as it was designed by Mr. Kessler, was primarily a green garden surrounded by brick walls and paths and a brick-edged shallow pool at the center. I'm going to show you an image of that right now. So I don't know who this individual is. Maybe I know her, but just don't. I met her, I've only been here 14 years, so I think this dates from the 1960s, judging by the attire. Maybe someone who's watching knows who that is and can identify this beautiful woman in the chat. But that is what the garden originally looked like, and you could see that there was, it was a very green space with a central water feature, which it also now has, though albeit very different, and I'll talk about this piece, which is waterless at the moment, in just a second. But it was a very green and lush urban oasis, which it still retains that character, though in a somewhat different format. It's been obviously replanted and reimagined since then. Kind of going back to this brief history, the garden, Red Mountain Garden Club notes that this green theme has remained with the garden throughout the growth, and that's just been a central kind of overarching motif that they've strived to maintain. I think that's really, really critical because, look, we're in the midst of a concrete jungle, so to speak, so to have actual living green space, and I'll just pan the area to give you a sense of just how verdant and lush it is. It's really, really critical to soften the feel of this otherwise built a concrete and brick built environment. So I would say very, very successful. In April of 1966, the fountain that I showed you here was designed by Barbara Leckberg of New York and added to a pool. That now resides in green space, and I'll give you a closer look in just a moment. And that was purchased in honor of Mrs. Crawford T. Johnson Jr., who was the Red Mountain Garden Club president from 1947 to 1949. And this beautiful garden provides such a sumptuous backdrop for sculpture from all over the world, from some of the great sculptors of the 20th century. But one thing I'm particularly proud of is that the work of a lot of important Alabama sculptors is featured here as well. We'll take a closer look at the Frank Fleming over in the distance. We've also got an example of the work of Charlie Lucas, the horse peeking out just behind the shrub. And so there's it's a really beautiful mixture of artists who are dear to us, locally, but also nationally and internationally known artists as well. And our local artists are, these are some of the best of our of what Alabama has produced. And so many of these Alabama born and raised artists have received national and international attention as well, which we're very, very proud. In the mid-1960s, 2 specimen willow oaks were given by Henry and Ferris Lynn in honor of their sons, Henry and George Lynn, who remain great friends of the Birmingham Museum of Art. And then after that, 8 water oaks were purchased by the family as memorial gifts to the garden. All were planted in March of 1965. I believe, and if I'm mistaken, that please correct me on this, that all but one of those original trees survive. I think there was one, if I remember correctly, that did have to be removed, but all the rest have survived through the many trials and tribulations, because I think, as you know, construction is notoriously detrimental to gardens and to existing plantings. And all it takes is someone to dig in the ground in the wrong place and destroy a root, which can destroy a tree, and miraculously all of that has been avoided throughout the years. And that's just really a testament to the love and care and attention that the members of the Red Mountain Garden Club devote to this space. They are fantastic custodians. I would even go so far as to say guardians of the space, to make sure that it maintains not only its beauty, but its integrity as an important urban garden. I want to just take us on a little bit of a walking tour in just a moment, but I'm going to take my seat one last time before we start moving, and just mention how this garden has changed over the years. And I'm balancing my iPad with one hand. So the garden today, it rests on the site of the museum's original garden and retains some elements of the original. The oak trees, as I already mentioned, but like all gardens, it has to evolve over time. I think those of you who garden avidly know this, that you have to adapt to the character of the built environment around it, to changing weather conditions, to all changing tastes even. Gardens are deeply personal, and so this has been something that the members of the Red Mountain Garden Club have been very intentional about, making sure that this is a space that continues to feel warm and inviting, or I should say warm in the cozy sense, but cool in sense of providing incredible shade in an otherwise sometimes unforgiving outdoor space. You'll notice a sharp temperature difference, or I will, when I take you up on the upper plaza. And so this garden had to be completely redesigned when the museum underwent its last renovation, which began in the late 1980s and into the early 90s, and that was under the guidance of Red Mountain Garden Club member Carolyn Tynes, and with the help of Jane Reed Ross, who's an important local landscape designer whom I've gotten to know through our mutual membership in Rotary, which has been a lot of fun. And the result of that collaboration is what we see today. It includes several additions in terms of works of art, most prominently what I've got right in front of me, a pool, a water feature called Blue Pools Courtyard, and with Blue Pools by the artist Valerie Jardin, which I think are quite lovely. You could see they do not have water in them at the moment. That's as a means of conservation While the museum is closed to the public, we've turned off all of our water features, not only this, but the large fountain on the upper plaza, which I'll show you in a moment. There were additional renovations to the garden in the early and mid-2000s, and then in 2012, a major lighting project was taken on by the Red Mountain Garden Club. I wish I could come back and show you this at night. Maybe one night I will. This space is absolutely spectacular at night, and that lighting project was undertaken by Elizabeth Pointer. It was a major lift, and they engaged the very important lighting designer Charles Stone of New York. His firm is Fisher, Marantz & Stone. They have been involved in so many important projects. They did one project around as a memorial around the Twin Towers in New York, where they projected these incredible shafts of light upward to the sky, representing where the Twin Towers had been. Utterly phenomenal. And Charles Stone and his team was part of that effort. And I'll post a link to that firm in the comment section. And the garden design, Norman Johnson, a beloved local garden designer and expert who has worked on many of the finest gardens in Birmingham. He was involved in the garden design around that time, and the lighting redesign would not have been possible without a major gift from the Collette family, wonderful philanthropists within our community whose family business is Mayer Electric. So truly grateful to them for their contribution. Over the years, the Memorial Garden, its maintenance and enhancements have come from a variety of sources and fundraisers and some endowments. The most significant annual fundraiser is the annual greenery sale. And one of the club's members, Ro Holman, asked me to let everyone know that sadly, because of the pandemic, for the first time in 38 years, this year's greenery sale has been canceled. But the members of the Red Mountain Garden Club are already working hard to plan the 2021 sale, which will occur the first Wednesday after Thanksgiving. So very sad that can't go forward, but I think it's something we're all experiencing, that it's just not safe to hold some of our major gatherings while we're still in the midst of a pandemic. And certainly we understand that here at the museum, where we've had to go virtual in nearly all of our efforts. A little hard to do that with the greenery sale, though, and we're just so grateful for the dedication of the Red Mountain Garden Club in providing the time, talent, and treasure to make this exquisite space possible for the citizens of Birmingham. It is such a boon to our community. So with that, I'm going to gather up my notes, and we're going to go on a little walking tour. That is the kind of the long and the short of it. I do want to take you around. There's some little, hidden jewels that you may not notice because most people walk directly to the center of the garden. But this is the original plaque, and it says, "A memorial garden dedicated to those who, by their works and gifts, have beautified our city. Red Mountain Garden Club, founder William H. Kessler, architect, and established 1959. So founded by the Red Mountain Garden Club and the architect William H. Kessler, established 1959. And I'm going to show this to you. I found the original article with all of my notes on it from the Birmingham News when this space was originally dedicated. This article, and I'm going to walk and talk at the same time. Hopefully that'll work out just fine. This article dates from the 29th of April, 1959, from the Birmingham News, and it says, "At Art Museum, garden will be living memorial. quote, "in memory of all who have loved gardens," end quote, is a fitting description of the plan behind the memorial garden established by the Red Mountain Garden Club on the grounds of the Oscar Wells Memorial Building, home of the Birmingham Museum of Art. For the garden was planned not merely for the memory of past members of the Red Mountain Garden Club, but to form a living memorial to those others, men and women, to whom gardening, flowers, trees, the good earth, was a deep-rooted and pervading absorption, end quote. I love that. I love the idea of that this space is not just a memorial tribute to the garden club's past members, but it really stands as a memorial to everyone, whether you're a member of a garden club or not, who has a love and passion for the good earth, for living things, for trees, for plants, for flowers, for shrubs. I think that what a wonderful idea from the inception. I won't read the entire article, but I'll read the final paragraph. It says, Red Mountain Garden Club members feel that they have had a rare privilege in building the garden, but they want to stress that memorial gifts are not made for their members alone. They want the memorial garden to be a monument that will grow in beauty for the people of Alabama to use and enjoy in memory of those who love gardens. So I'll just mention that I don't think, no one has asked me to, launch a fundraiser, but, given that original intent, if there is someone in your life who's passionate about gardens and you're looking to honor in some way, that was the intent of this space from the inception, to honor all those who love gardens. So keep that in mind. If there is someone that you'd like to honor who's passionate about gardens, we can accept donations here at the Birmingham Museum of Art when there's a dedicated fund for Red Mountain Garden Club projects when we receive the funds directly to us. So just a little shout out to the original intent in a way that you can keep giving in the spirit of that original intent. So now I'm going to walk us through the gardens, and forgive me for a moment, I'm going to try to grab some of my notes. This is always the hardest part. Like I said, I've only got 2 hands last time I checked. And so I'm going to take us through some of the gardens, some little kind of discrete areas of the garden, and show you some of the sculptures. Some of the sculptures have been here quite a long time. This is called La Danseuse Natova, the dancer Natova, by a French artist named Serge Yurevich, who lived between 1876 and 1969. This was installed as a gift of Mrs. Bessie Mussey in 1967 and has been in the garden, I believe, since that time. I'm going to walk around. I'm going to show you, I have already mentioned Valerie Jardin's blue pools. You can see it was quite a major commission. Museum purchase with funds provided by the Community Brick Campaign, sponsored by the junior patrons of the Birmingham Museum of Art, the Red Mountain Garden Club, the 1991 Museum Ball, and Museum Acquisition Funds. I think that the length of the credit line is directly proportionate to the price, typically, not always, but often. And so it's a major effort, but the result is beautiful, and I will make a point as soon as the water's turned back on to come back out and share that with you in some way, because it's really, really beautiful and adds to the cooling oasis effect of this space. I want to show you the piece that was given as a memorial to Mary Stuart Snyder Johnson, Mrs. Crawford Johnson, in 1965. It is by Barbara Holt Leckberg, who only passed away a couple years ago, born in 1925, died in 2018. And the title appropriately is Ascent. It's quite a monumental piece. It stands, I would say, nearly 10 feet tall. I'll try to stand back and give you the full view. And it's, I think it's lovely, lovely as a sculpture in its own right. I also think, though, in the picture that I showed you, when it was installed in a water feature, it also looked quite beautiful there. I will say, though, that water features are notoriously harsh, even under the best conditions, on bronze sculpture. Requires a lot of waxing. You can dull the patina quite easily. And a good example of this is some of you, I think, already know that the Storyteller Fountain by Frank Fleming is in our permanent collection. Even though it's off-site, it's down at 5 points. But we have to regularly maintain that, which means cleaning and waxing on an annual basis. I think for the long-term health of this sculpture, probably a good thing that it's no longer in the midst of a water feature. These tiles that comprise blue pools were actually made to be covered by water and are quite easily cleaned and maintained. Speaking of the beloved sculptor Frank Fleming, a fixture in our community, one of the great artists in our state's history. This is a wonderful example that Ken Jackson gave to us back in 2011, and it's just entitled Rat. And it is so typical of Frank's work. And I'm sorry I'll see if I can get in a spot where you don't get all the backlight. I mean, don't really have control over the sun. But you can see that, Frank's creatures are kind of hybrids, the human hands and a dog-like face, and the kind of bird-like feet, and you could say whether that's more of a rat's tail or armadillo-like. It's hard to say, but he definitely created these whimsical creatures with the only rules he played by were his own rules. Let's just put it that way. Next, I want to share with you a work entitled Fuel Dog by Charlie Lucas. Some of you know him by his nickname, the Tin Man. Charlie Lucas, I forget which town he's originally from, but I know that he may still live in Selma. He lived right next door to our beloved state storyteller, Catherine Tucker Wyndham. For many, many years, they were great friends, and he had many of his works behind the house. I had the opportunity to visit once. Catherine Tucker Wyndham was still alive. Sadly, Mr. Lucas was not at home, so I did not get to see him that day, but it was a pleasure to be in the back and see some of his work with Catherine leading the tour. That was one of the more memorable days I've spent in Alabama in the last 14 years. And speaking on September 11th, that'll be my 14-year anniversary. So that was my first day of work at the Birmingham Museum of Art 14 years ago. A week of anniversary events, the 50th Director's Cut, and my 14th year in Alabama. This is a work that has gotten a lot of attention. It is by Rodin, the preeminent French sculptor. I'm going to stand back so you can see the whole thing. It is entitled Jean d'Air, Nude. It was originally modeled in 1886, and it was cast in 1986. Now, in case any of you think, well, how can this be an original Rodin if it was, cast 100 years after it was originally conceived? Auguste Rodin left very, very specific provisions in his will authorizing posthumous casts of his work by the Musée de Rodin in Paris. They are considered bona fide casts. They are just not lifetime casts. So we are very fortunate to have this here. He has, not surprisingly, become a popular destination for selfies as has the work of the Colombian Fernando Botero, who was born in 1932. This is simply entitled Reclining Nude. 84. Botero is known for creating sculptures where the subjects, sometimes humans, sometimes animals, are what we might call Rubenesque or Zoftig, if you know that term. There is no lack of curves and flesh, and they are perennial crowd pleasers. One of the kind of humorous things that I think we have a photo of somewhere, I don't know if I'll be able to lay my hands on it. This is, because it's bronze and because it's outdoors in an urban environment, this too, like the sculpture at 5 Points, requires annual cleaning. And so one of our staff members comes out here and, lovingly cleans this work by hand. But, when our staff member is cleaning this work, it's almost like, she's giving it a sponge bath in a way. It looks like the sculpture's and, like at a spa or something, and getting a rather humorous. It takes on a kind of more lifelike quality at that moment. One of the more recent additions to this beautiful garden, and this gorgeous canopy of trees provided the perfect spot for this. It is the sculpture from India, Shiva Nataraja, Lord of Dance, in 2013, and this was given to the Birmingham Museum of Art by one of our trustees and his wife, Sanjay Singh, and his wife, Dora. And this was given in honor of our longtime curator of Asian art, who retired just a couple years ago, Dr. Don Wood, for his dedicated service to Asian art at the Birmingham Museum of Art. And a wonderful story behind this, Don and Dora were all in India together, and they visited the foundry where this was made, and were able to acquire it for the museum. So it came all the way directly from India, but it was it's a wonderful example of contemporary, though in a traditional vein, but also in a way a sort of deluxe souvenir of that very happy trip and very happy memory for all of them. So a personal element as well. I am going to turn to this corner of the garden, and this is by the Lithuanian-born modern sculptor, American, born in Lithuania, Jacques Lipschitz. This is Mother and Child of 1949. And this was purchased with funds provided by the Meyer Foundation and Mr. and Mrs. Bill Cabanis, in memory of William Jelks Cabanis III and the Meyer Foundation. And this was 1986. Beautiful example, and very, very abstract, though I think you can see that it is a mother nursing her child. Once you kind of check out the shape. Speaking of modernism, this is a work by the Ukrainian-born French and American sculptor. I think ultimately at the end of his life he resided in America, I believe became an American citizen, Alexander Archipenko, who lived from 1887 to 1964. Another family theme instead of a mother and child. This is the entire family seated here with the kind of the mother, child, and it's kind of it almost looks like it's hard to make out the kind of all of the position of the figures, because we've got kind of one leg propped up over the body of another, but it's a beautiful composition. We're fortunate to have from the Archipenko Foundation, and it's been on loan since, I believe, 2008 with us. Now I'm going to take us around to the other side, and I'm going to show you where we are just so you don't lose your bearings. So we're on the other side of the garden, and this is a subject that has some local significance, and I would venture to guess that a few people who are watching right now knew the subject of this piece. This is a portrait of Martin Hames done in 1975 by an important Birmingham-based sculptor named Cordray Parker. Cordray Parker lived from 1933 to 2000, and this sculpture was done in 1975, and it was a gift of Friends of the Museum through Mrs. James Foreman, acquired in 1976, the year after it was done. This is the subject of a recent book called Larger Than Life, Memories of Carl Martin Hames. Some of you already know that Martin Hames was a beloved educator at the Altamont School, completely beloved by so many students. I never knew him. He passed away before I arrived. I've heard so many stories over the years and heard so much about, kind of what impact he had on his students' life. And in fact, this book was compiled. It consists of memories compiled by his former students, many of them who credit him with, opening their eyes to things that led to their, ultimate successes in their adult lives. So it just had a profound impact. Now, you might say, well, what's the story behind this particular work? It's kind of unusual, and forgive me, I'm struggling with my notes. The proper title of it is Martin Hames as Hadrian VII. Well, you say, well, who is Hadrian VII? Hadrian VII is actually the title of a 1904 novel by Frederick Rolfe, who wrote under the pseudonym Baron Corvo. And it's about this failed priest. It was an individual who was denied priesthood. He was denied his ordination, but eventually the Vatican reached out to him with the intention of making him the Pope, much to his surprise. And he adopted the name Hadrian VII because the only previous English pope was Hadrian IV. Not sure why he skipped it. He skipped to seventh. There must be a reason for that in the novel. But you kind of wonder, well, how did this kind of obscure 1904 English novel make sculpture in 1975? Well, it didn't linger in obscurity. It became a rather successful stage play in the late 1960s in London, and then eventually on Broadway in New York. Those people who know Martin Hames or knew Martin Hames know that he was a great lover of the theater, traveled broadly, and though I don't know specifically, my guess is that he must have expressed some love for this particular production, must have seen it in either London or New York, and it somehow became the subject of conversation between subject and artist, and that was ultimately responsible to the papal attire that he's wearing. I'm not exactly sure what you call that type of hat. It's not quite a diadem, but some sort of a papal head covering, let's say. And then take us around. I'm going to show you a space that is not really activated right now, though we recently, a few years ago, received a very generous gift to form the basis of an endowment for programming for what we sometimes call the sculpture pit, properly called the sculpture court. Right now, we have used it for seating that was normally on the deck off of the museum's cafe. In the background, you will see Sol LeWitt, which I sometimes say is the most often seen work of art in Birmingham, though I think Giuseppe Moretti's Vulcan would give it a run for the money. But this is visible as you fly into Birmingham from the air. I fly a lot, not this year sadly, but I always am able to point him in the air by looking for the Sol LeWitt. I'm going to take us out of the sculpture court, and then we're going to the upper plaza. I'm just going to check the time. We've got a few more minutes. And I see that Tabitha, you've asked, is this the only Cordray Parker in the museum's collection? I believe we have at least one other, but let me check on that once I'm back at my desk. Thank you for the question. And Tabitha, also thank you for looking up that Charlie Lucas was raised in Elmore County, north of Montgomery. Okay, here we go. We are headed up the ramp to the upper plaza. I'll show you just briefly the label for the Sol LeWitt. The proper title is Bands of Color in Various Directions. Dates from 2001. It is a work that, because it's outdoors and the elements here are quite harsh on it, it is a candidate to be remade. When you acquire a Sol LeWitt, you're acquiring the concept, and the idea is that the work can be remade in perpetuity, at least this type of work. And so that's something that we would need to work with his estate on to recreate this, because that it becomes so faded, it really disturbs the integrity of the piece, just full transparency. So this is on the to-do list. We got a lot on our plate right now with some of the funding challenges we face due to the. When we can get to it, this is certainly a priority, because it is spectacular, but the purples and the greens are far less vivid than they used to be. This is not supposed to be in kind of, dusty sort of pastel shades, but in very bright, vibrant primary colors. So I'm going to walk straight ahead, and you're going to hear a lot of noise because they're still doing interstate, though much of it is already completed, as you know. This is by the artist Beverly Pepper, entitled Trapezium Altar, done between 1985 and 1986, the gift of the Frederick R. Weissman Art Foundation in 1991. This is one of my favorite pieces. This is by George Rickey. It is a kinetic sculpture, meaning that when it is activated by a good strong wind, it turns. Sometimes it turns a little too much, and so when we have really inclement weather, our prep staff has to come out and anchor it down, and we have special tethers and anchors. But there you can see some of them moving. We're getting just a bit of a breeze right now, but it reminds me, it's meant to evoke a tree in some ways, in the way that the wind activates the leaves on a tree. It's a really significant example of his work, and the exact title is done in 1965, and it was given to the museum by Kenneth Ricklin in 1997. So really, really grateful for this. Like I said, a really significant example of his. I think I have a particular affinity for George Rickey's work because when I was an undergrad, I was in Pearson College. That was my residential college, and we had a Rickey in the courtyard, which we used to, kind of push to make, move, do what it was supposed to do, which was move. We never had much of a breeze in that courtyard, so we had to provide the. All right, we'll see how many of you are still with me. Unfortunately, I lost the signal. I had a brilliant, beautiful, strong signal, and I don't know what happened, but hopefully a couple. Well, folks, I guess that was the odds of wireless technology telling me that I needed to wrap it up, because try as I might, I could not get a strong signal from the upper plaza. So with that, I will just thank you all, those of you who remain, for joining me today for the 50th installment of the Director's Cut. It was a pleasure to have you with me. And I'll just end by saying one of the plans that I eventually have for the Upper Plaza, I would like to activate it in a way that it's more used by our visitors. Right now, there's not a lot of rest from the sunlight up there. I would love if we could get some of the kind of large chaise longues that you see I've seen them in parks in Denver, and they have these huge overhanging umbrellas that provide wonderful shade. So I'd love to have some seating up there, but some shaded seating, so that becomes another usable space for our visitors. But with that, thank you again for joining me, and tune in same time, same place next week. Take care. Bye-bye.